Welcome to another episode of Last Call Games. So you may be wondering first, why am I wearing a Flyers jersey? Well, I'm in Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't really have a hockey team. Frankly put, I want Detroit not to make the playoffs because Detroit sucks. That's also completely beside the point. So today we're reviewing two Dreamcast games. Why two? Because they're both sports games, and if I can review two games with a relatively common theme in between them, that'll make it a lot easier to review all the Dreamcast games in a relatively decent amount of time. So today we're looking at ESPN International Track and Field and ESPN NBA 2Night. Now, both of these games, besides obviously having the ESPN name, are by Konami. Apparently at some point in time between the late 90s, around 97 or 98, and the year 2000, Sony lost the rights to make ESPN video games. And in their place, Konami got them. Konami made ESPN games from the year 2000, which is when these are, all the way up to about the year 2003, when Sega / 2K Sports took over the rights, which they had until about 2005 when EA has them, and I think EA still has them today. Now, they only made two of these games for the Dreamcast, which are the two games that we have today. So, what happens when you take a publisher that at the time was pretty well known for action games and in older times was known for really great arcade games like Contra and Russian Attack and Castlevania, which was not an arcade game, but still Castlevania was one of their best known franchises, and later on the Metal Gear Solid series. And what happens when you take them, give them sports licenses? We'll find out. But first, a couple important notes that we should make regarding Last Call Games as a whole, not just these two reviews. Last Call Games has, first off, a new website. It's basically just a WordPress site where we post a lot of reviews. Reviews of games like these, rental reviews, where basically I review a game that I've rented for anywhere from a day to a week or so, and put those into a relatively small text review, and also older reviews for when I was reviewing games like 10 years ago. I made reviews then on a completely different website. I just basically copied and pasted them to this new one. And also, one of the more interesting features we have, the NoobTube, where basically one of the people we have who's not a video gamer at all, really, reviews things like tablet games, mobile games, free-to-play PC games. I think right now they're working on a Lord of the Rings Online because it's a free-to-play game, really. You got stuff like Minecraft was, I think, the first one. They reviewed the Minecraft Pocket Edition. Really popular among like 8 to 12-year-olds. But still, how is it? Is it worth playing? Well, that's what the NoobTube is for. Also, secondly, arguably more importantly, if you're certain people, YouTube, or Last Call Games, not YouTube. YouTube does not need one. Last Call Games has a Patreon page now. Basically, if you want to, you can pay to support the channel, even $1 or $2 a month, or something like that, any amount, really. You can support the channel, and any Patreons on the Patreon page has been up for a couple weeks now, but I haven't mentioned it in the video because I keep forgetting. At the end of the video, every single Patreon that does at least $1, because I think that's the smallest amount I could put, will be on a big wall at the very end, a thank you wall. It could end up being like 2 or 3 slides, but every single Patreon that's active will be on there. So, and you can go all the way up to, I think it's the $50 mark. Maybe I could change that later, but right now the $50 mark, you can decide which video game I review every month. I typically do 2 video reviews. You can decide one of them. There's 2 give it to $100, you can decide all of them. So, and if the Patreon becomes really successful, I can do a lot of things. Of course, expand the channel, so I'm not using a DSLR camera, which you can see right there in the reflection of it. So I'm not using a DSLR camera to do videos with. So I can get better lighting, better capture device. I still don't have an HDMI capture at the moment. A little awkward. You can help me do all those things, and then later on, as I said, if it becomes very successful, we could start taking YouTube ads off. So you don't have to watch those sometimes 50 seconds to maybe a couple minutes. I once had a YouTube ad that was half an hour long. Hopefully the one that you get right now won't be that long.
Let's start with NBA 2Night, obviously named after ESPN's flagship NBA-centric show of the time. The presentation is pretty decent, with menus based off the company's branding at the time, and the same with the in-game scoreboards and the like. The game also makes use of ESPN's talent for voices, with play-by-play done by the legendary Brent Musburger, who you may remember from basically any college football game in the 1990s, and the color commentary done by longtime SportsCenter host Stuart Scott. Scott's sound bites are great, and he hits on all the popular bits, but there's so few of them that they start repeating multiple times in a quarter that could be as short as 1 minute long. Musburger's play-by-play is adequate, especially for the time. Every player's name was recorded, which is not a given at the turn of the millennium. However, while the graphics are good, they're not great. And everything else is just not good. The gameplay modes are limited to preseason, which is basically an exhibition mode, practice, season, playoffs, and the All-Star game. You may notice the lack of any franchise mode at all. The game came out a few weeks after NBA 2K1 in the US, which had a GM mode, as well as a bunch of other options like customization and the addictive street ball mode, both of which are nowhere to be found here. The modes do allow you to customize things like how long each quarter is and how long the season or playoff series is, which is nice, and lets you play through an entire playoffs in half an hour. The gameplay, on the other hand, which is arguably the most important part of a game, is flawed. I'll admit I'm not the world's leading expert on basketball, but there are many problems that accumulate when you play a game of NBA 2Night. Sometimes the game won't let you pass 2 teammates. It's probably a glitch or a bug, but it happened multiple times in the hour or so of video I recorded for this review. You'll just throw the ball in some direction and run straight into your closest teammate, not able to move out of the way until the ball's out of bounds. Another is the much higher than realistic chance of pretty much a buzzer beater type shot going in. When I played my season opener with the Grizzlies, I was hanging with the Seattle Sonics pretty well. But at the last second, one of the Sonic players tosses up a prayer shot from the other 3-point line, and it goes in, and I lose by 3 points. I'm not joking.
Baker puts up a shot.
Definitely the strangest bug / glitch / feature / poor bit of programming is when players can dunk from pretty much anywhere in the paint. It only works with some players. Some guys just cannot do a dunk or a layup at all. Other players, usually centers or forwards, will dunk from practically where they line up at a free throw. It's mesmerizing. Speaking of free throws, the game's mechanic for them is actually not that bad. Basically, color flashes on a series of zones on the backboard in sequence, and if you select the right one, you'll make the basket.
Good head fake by.
It reminds me a bit of the darts minigame in Shenmue, which is the only time I will ever relate Shenmue to a basketball game. I prefer the system in NBA 2K1 where the analog triggers are used to move the two arrows, but neither system is at all terrible, and they both do the job pretty well.
Harrington brings it inbounds.
Also, the computer AI will not intentionally foul you or call a timeout. If there's less than 24 seconds in a quarter or a game and you're up, you could just hold the ball for the whole time and the AI will not care one bit.
And the game's over.
The more time I spent with this game, the less I liked it.
Baker
It lacks a
leans in.
lot of the features I'd come to expect from a game in this time frame.
Abdurrahim
And it didn't have internet
puts the
play
ball
either,
in
which
play.
I can't really say surprises me, but
Reeves
its main competition,
leans in.
NBA 2K1,
Baker
did have
with
it.
the rebound.
And the gameplay makes it even worse. And the cherry on top is when I won the NBA Finals. There's no
Ewing
confetti,
shoots
no
it.
trophy, just congratulations, Vancouver Grizzlies, NBA champions, and then the rest of the credits. ESPN NBA 2Night gets a 3 out of 10. It slid further and further the more I played it. 2K1 is a far superior game that's also much more common and usually can be got very cheaply. Hell, you could probably even get it for free if you buy a lot of games from someone.
Hello? Somebody put a hand
So that's the NBA game. How does international track and
Stoudemire
field hold
gets
up?
the in-
Well, if you wanted a polygonal version of the over 20-year-old NES/arcade track and field game, well, this is your game. Otherwise, don't really bother. I don't know why every company that makes track and field type games uses the button mashing gameplay that's similar to the original track and field game. Be it Konami themselves in this game, Sony in their Olympic games, or pretty much anyone else who makes Olympic sponsored games. They all decide the only way to play a track and field type game is to mash buttons alternate buttons on your controller until the controller breaks or your fingers do. This game looks like a PlayStation 1 game. Admittedly, it is a port of one, but it's also out on the N64 and later came out on the PS2. It has really pretty ugly characters even when there's only one competitor on screen. When you can see the polygons that easily, it's not a good idea, a good thing. The crowds look ugly. NFL 2K had better ones a year earlier as a launch title. And the graphics are just bleh. It's not a pretty game at all. Also, of course, there's zero commentary. Just the stadium announcer telling you that you fouled or whatever your result is. Well, most events are over in less than 30 seconds before making you sit through an unskippable animation or a skippable replay, and after a video telling you how to play the game, which is useful, but still. It would have been nice to have any sort of commentary. This game manages to have even less modes than its basketball counterpart. There's Trial and Championship modes. Trial is a practice where you play through one of the events you've unlocked, and Championship makes you play 8 events in a row. Supposedly at random according to the manual, but both times I played I got the exact same events in the exact same order. This means I never unlocked the other 4 events, but all of them have the same gameplay with one exception. The gameplay is...
First attempt.
All of them have the same idea, except for the horizontal bars, which is, I think, the last event you play. The last event I played both times. You alternate the X and B buttons to build up a power gauge, and sometimes you have to use the action button, which is either the L or the R trigger, to do something. Maybe use the analog stick for deciding a weight or a height for difficulty, basically, but that's usually not part of the actual gameplay. For the most part, it's stupidly hard. In 6 attempts, I could not even do the lowest weightlifting once. I never finished higher than last in a race. But the pole vault seemed to work best, and I got 2 silver medals for it. The basic thing is you need to have the controller like in your lap or on a table or somewhere that you don't have to actually hold it, so you can mash buttons with your forefinger and thumb while having another finger on the trigger to do an action. In the hours I played, I could not find a way that was completely comfortable and usable. And of course, having it slide around in my lap didn't help. I couldn't even use my arcade stick because when it uses directional input, like for the up and down part, it won't recognize the D-pad at all. It'll only recognize the joystick. The horizontal bar, as I said earlier, is different. In that case, you press a trigger in time with a gauge, and then do directions to complete a move. Of course, with the joystick and not the analog stick, a few times I'll be moving in one direction, it thinks I'm moving in a perpendicular one. Probably actually more of a diagonal. If I could use the D-pad or my arcade stick, it would make it much easier to properly put in the directions. Maybe this might be a decent party game. Just because then up to 4 people can suck at the same time and all commiserate about how they're terrible at the Olympics, not Olympics. But ESPN International Track and Field gets another 3 out of 10. It's as bad as the other game, but in different ways. I haven't played the Sydney 2000 game for the system yet, and I don't know of any other track and field games, but honestly, I've never played one I really liked anyway. Let's bring it back for some final thoughts.
So, that's these 2 games. ESPN International Track and Field and ESPN NBA 2Night. Both Dreamcast games, both that came out actually right about the same time. So that's them. And then next week, I'm going to be out of town next week, so I may not be able to actually record a proper Let's Cast. I may actually just do something else. I'm not 100% certain yet. But the next video review I'll be doing will definitely not be a sports game. And that's it for this episode of Last Call Games. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and also follow on social media. Check out that website. If you want to support the page, check out the Patreon. That's the best way to do it. You got social media, Facebook, Twitter. I check all the comments on YouTube. Tumblr, Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. Follow any or all of those, and we will see you next time here on Last Call Games. Today we're going to go and review Madden NFL 2008 for the Nintendo GameCube, which was, in the US, the very last GameCube game ever released. And just like last year when we reviewed Madden 09 on the Xbox, we're also going to take a look at the Xbox 360 version of the same game.